Hey, no, welcome to our LeaderCast, our special LeaderCast, as we deal with how we're going to lead through COVID-19. I have a good group of my friends here who are super smart, super engaged, but absolutely very serious about what we're going through now. And we feel at LEAD360 is some of our responsibilities to make sure that we are providing information, we're providing just an opportunity to have a conversation, to ask questions, and you realize that you are not alone. As leaders, and leaders is it's a very lonely situation, especially if you're a senior leader. But this particular broadcast is open to not only leaders, but people are leading families, people are leading industries, and people are leading all types of situations. For right now, we need to lead ourselves through a very challenging situation. So LEAD360, I'm going to kind of pause a little bit and then allow a nice little video by my friend Daryl Smith, who's one of our executive advisors, who tell you a little bit about who LEAD360 is. So we're going to kind of roll this video real quick, and then we're going to come right back with you and go through our program for today.
You know, the success that can come from this think tank for all the participants is really around winning. Winning from the standpoint of one's personal career. It's winning from the standpoint of how they represent and support their organizations, implement some of the best practices that they're surfacing here. And it's around winning, around really how do we connect with the talent and position the talent, our future leaders, to be successful in the workplace. So what comes out of this is the spirit of winning for all. We've got a pool of talented leaders here with passion, conviction, and the know-how to go back and to execute on what we're working on. What I'm learning from them is also that we need to be agile and flexible as we take this information back to the organization, because one size doesn't fit all. You know, the whole premise of LEAD360, I think from the origin, has been how do we embrace African American Black talent in corporate America and intentionally position and create a platform in an environment where growth, learning takes place that it's then transferred back to the corporate work environment. So how does LEAD really support Black talent? It supports Black talent by creating a network, bringing them cutting edge, state-of-the-art information real time. Best practices as it relates to talent development, best practices as it relates to leadership development. So it's the holistic approach that they bring to development that supports, again, that winning attitude is what LEAD360 brings. You know, so there is a message I have for the executives in corporate America that not only participate in the our LEAD360 conference, but who haven't had the opportunity yet to understand what it is that LEAD360 is really creating and executing on. And that is, here is an opportunity for you to reevaluate how you're thinking about the development of your talent within your organization, specifically your African American and Black talent. There's much research and data that informs us that by 2030, the landscape of talent will look completely different. And the question becomes, are you harnessing the talent that you have now in preparation for the tsunami that's approaching? And if you're not, it's a good time to take a step back and engage with LEAD360 around how you might begin to look at that differently.
So first of all, we have Lydia Kashaka. Lydia works and runs all of our, runs the entire organization, I always like to say. She is our head of all of our program director, and she puts in all of our marketing information and leads all of our marketing efforts. She's my right-hand person, and she's the reason why this can go on very nicely and smoothly. And she puts a lot of the background information. So I want to really say thank you very much, Lydia, for your efforts here. We have with us Dr. Bernadette Anderson, who hails from Columbus, Ohio. She is a family medicine doctor. She actually went to, she got her medical degree from Medical College of Ohio, which is right here in Toledo, or right there in Toledo, Ohio. She went to a school, that school up north. So if you're from Ohio, you never can mention that school's name, so we'll keep going. So thank you very much. She's also has the experience of working right in the forefront, right at the front lines with regards to the COVID disease. Matter of fact, this weekend she had to go into the emergency room to really get and deal with the disease one-on-one. So when we bring you information, we're not bringing you information of people who don't know what's going on. We're bringing you information with the physicians and the leaders who actually take it upon themselves to make sure this works well. Dr. Taylor decided to abandon us from the New York area, and now she's down in Sarasota, Florida. Dr. Janet Taylor is a world-renowned psychiatrist. She's got her degree from she went to Louisville and then went to Brown as well. Got her medical degree from New York Medical College, and she likes the Ivy League a little bit with Brown and Columbia, having a degrees and certificates and internships from there. Dr. Alvin Wells, I like to brag on Dr. Alvin Wells. Literally worked with him in medical affairs with a couple of different companies. One of the guys I always tell that he's Phi Beta Kappa means he doesn't know what a B looks like when he went to school. He's one of the world top rheumatologists and immunologists. They have a group of just the people they allow to actually educate the rest of the rheumatologists called T-Red. I think he may be the only or one of the few African-American members of that very elite group of rheumatologists in all of the United States and all of Europe as well. From standpoint, he has experience both as obviously a medical doctor, rheumatologist, but he's worked in corporate America with Abbott as a director of medical affairs there. So he understands not only the side from a medical standpoint, he also understands the side of how we have to lead. Dr. Tiffany Dotson, one of our executive advisors and a LEAD360 think tank fellow, runs all of the leadership development for Liberty Mutual. She's also head of all global education and executive.
And you may not think that's a big deal, but we must prevent the spread of this disease because that's all we have right now. At my office, I have moved completely to telemedicine, and the governor of Ohio has actually put a stay-at-home in order in place. And these things are really helping people who are on the front line, who must continue to serve the patient population, but want to maintain safety for themselves and for their families. Everybody is not getting tested for COVID-19. I think it was yesterday, I get so many emails every hour, I don't know when I got it, but they put together a tier, 1 through 5, telling us who should be tested. And the tiers 1, 2, and 3 will be the ones who are tested. And these people are hospitalized patients or healthcare providers who are taking care of them. And you have those people in that mild to moderate risk group who are at risk, higher risk of getting COVID-19. People with mild symptoms and moderate symptoms, we are still trying to treat them in their homes because the benefit of that is not to have our healthcare system even more overburdened than it already is. So that's kind of a snapshot. And then I'll let Dr. Wells expound upon that.
Dr. Anderson, you did a great job kind of bringing this up to the summary. I think a couple little pearls I'd like to share. So I grew up in South Carolina. I'm not that old, actually today is my birthday, but I remember growing up and seeing kids with some of these viral illnesses that we now think most have been eradicated. So things like mumps and measles we all saw, but I also remember a couple of kids who had polio and other things like this. So I say that as an example because these viruses, once they are introduced into the population, can be devastating. Some can cause some crippling changes like polio. The coronavirus, because like Dr. Anderson said, it's a new virus to humans. We haven't had what we call immunity. Immunity is like the pit bull. That's the one that protects you. And we haven't built up that yet. It's going to take some time. And then we're also working on the scientists that, hey, how can we develop a vaccine for that? And then in the meantime, also looking at what kind of treatments that we have. One thing I'd also like to iterate, we talk about, washing your hands and your face. Nothing's better than soap and water. And particularly for the men, most men don't wear makeup, so they brush their teeth and get right in bed. But men definitely need to wash their hands and their face before bed at night. We talk about something called the T-zone. So in your face like this and like this is where the virus can enter, the eyes and nose and the mouth. I also heard some interesting facts in the news today. South Korea looks like they're turning the page. And why the rates of transmission are going down. If you see everybody, as soon as they get off the bus, off the train, they all have a mask on. And they've also done social distancing. And they didn't have to lock the country down like they did in China. So by doing those simple things, we can show indeed that patients and we can do well and patients don't overwhelm the system. Like Dr. Anderson, my group also, we've actually closed for all ambulatory, means all clinics for patients healthy enough to walk in. And they've also stopped testing patients as well. They're reserving the test for the patients who are sick in the hospital, so inpatients. And so what cardinal features do you need to look out for? And she highlighted those is a fever, first of all. The symptoms of a cold, but it's like a cold on steroids. You feel sick, you feel achy. And then something new is coming out of Italy and other places. It's talking about people losing their sense of smell and a sense of taste. So those are some things that we need to think about. Last week in my clinic, we had over 1,800 calls that we had to field. And some calls were, I'll give you a good example. A 16-year-old boy, mother called in, said he had a fever of 103. I asked a couple of questions and said he had a history of strep throat. And that in a 16-year-old with strep throat, I said, go to urgent care for a strep throat test. On the other hand, I had a teacher. She had been home for a week. She got a temperature of 99, a little nasal congestion. I reassured her that is not coming from the COVID-19. So fever, headaches, loss of taste, loss of smell, and then the achiness that goes along with that, that's the raise the cardinal features. And if we can't stress enough, wash your hands. And before you go to bed, of course, washing your face.
So, Dr. Anderson and Dr. Wells, a couple of different things that we're hearing about the disease is one, that the reason it's corona says it has a spike in the way the configuration of the actual molecule or of the actual virus, because it then, if it's in the lung, it attaches to the lung. That's why it seems to be a little bit more, a lot more dangerous than other viral viruses. Can you maybe speak to that at all?
Yeah, I can touch on that. So it's called corona because you imagine like a spaceship. A spaceship has those legs that kind of lines onto the moon, and then people get out of there and walk onto the moon. A virus cannot live by itself, so it has this kind of spikes on it. It allows it to attach to the respiratory system. That means from the nose, the back of the throat, and into the lungs. That attaches and allows that virus to inject its material inside of the cell. And then what it does, it takes over that cell and becomes it to replicate. Now, here's the thing, of all the deaths that's been occurred worldwide, people haven't died from the viral infection. It's from the damage that the virus causes, and it's for the body's own immune system trying to attack the virus, trying to ward off that virus. And that's what happens in these cases of patients. And in many cases, the patients have died from, they get on top of the viral infection, they get a bacterial infection, and many people are dying from pneumonia. And Dr. Anderson can probably tell you that once the lung gets filled up with fluid and damage, there's unfortunately not a whole lot you can do for that. And this is why people need to be on a ventilator. And that means it's an artificial machine that breathes for you. And in places like New York and Seattle, Washington, where they're running out of these ventilators because of the urgency and the people that are on that. But that's what essentially what it means, that corona, those spikes allows it to attach to the cells. And it can live on surfaces like Dr. Anderson says. It's a key for us. Once you touch something, you need to wash your hands. You get a package in the mail. It could have been, the virus could have been on there for a couple of hours or a day even, and you need to kind of wash that off and make sure you do appropriate things.
Absolutely. Great. Next slide, please. So, okay, I think we've addressed kind of the real science behind this. You can move ahead, David. So, we have this thing, it was as a boomer, I was a bit offended a couple weeks ago when they were telling me that, it's the boomer eliminator. So the reality is people going out to the beaches, having fun, they're hanging out here in Bethesda, in Maryland, playing basketball on 9 yards, and saying that, young people don't get it, and then some people say, wow, we noticed that because it's only reported on people who are maybe more mainstream, maybe blacks don't get it. So what populations are affected? Are there any differences? What are you noticing?
Well, one of the things I would like to emphasize here is that right now, everybody is vulnerable. Okay.
Yeah.
I can't say that any clearer. Everybody is vulnerable because every day we get new information about this disease. However, we have identified the elderly population and people with immune systems that are immunocompromised with cancer, heart disease, or diabetes are at higher risk. But that does not mean that each of us aren't at risk of actually getting this disease.
Are people with rheumatoid arthritis, particularly because they have immune-mediated inflammatory disorder, are they more at risk than the general population?
So, and I'm glad you mentioned it up here because again, with our diseases, a rheumatologist, many people hear the TV commercials for these diseases and they say the drugs sound worse than their disease because of the side effects. They do weaken the immune system. But here's the fact that if your disease is not under control, it could be psoriasis, it could be lupus, it could be rheumatoid arthritis, but also can be diabetes and other diseases as well. If those are not under control, you're more susceptible to the infections. So when we fielded all these calls last week, many people were saying, hey, I'm on this drug, it can cause some side effects. Should I stop my drug? The answer is no. Because if you're not sick enough to fight your disease, you will not be strong enough to fight the infection. And the other pearl I like to make too, I said my mother who's 86 years old in South Carolina, I mean, as we know, when these things happen in society, it's going to be the people who are the weaker part of the population, and in a sense, meaning the people who are more elderly, the people who don't have the resources. I mean, you saw about people going out and buying all the stuff up, so not even the people can go and get things in the stores. But I made the point to tell my mom, okay, hey, she's in South Carolina, but she should not go to church, due to TV or radio, that she should take advantage of that first hour where the stores are opening up so they can not be crowded around other people as well. But like Dr. Anderson said, we're getting more and more reports, it's affecting younger people as well. Could that be risk factors for asthma? These young people were vaping. Could it be from drinking? But the bottom line, this thing is affecting from top to bottom. In Illinois last week, an infant developed the disease, and she's actually struggling in the hospital now as well. I don't know what kind of risk factors he had, but the bottom line, it can affect the young and the old.
Okay, awesome. We can move forward, David. Thank you very much. That's very, very, very informative because literally, I got to tell you, people were thinking, hey, you know what? Kids don't get it. Well, we should go back to school. This will all be over in 2 weeks. We'll talk about that probably at the end. Dr. Dodson, you have an enormous organization that you are leading, as well as you, Dr. Steele, and George Robinson. How are you, what are you hearing from your peers about how, you are leading through this particular situation? Is there anything that you see particularly important, particularly interesting at all?
Yeah, I would say, thanks for the opportunity to talk. What I'm hearing from my peers is that employees at large, managers and leaders and employees, they're concerned about their jobs. They're concerned about having to work from home and what does that mean? If you don't have a white collar job, can you do it from home? How can you scale up? How do you actually lead virtually? A lot of people do work from home and have had the opportunity to have engaged teams through leading, but not most of us. So how do you actually lead a team virtually? How do you also have human conversations around this experience? How do you express vulnerability? We have historically been focused on results. So how do you show up differently for this particular crisis right now? So my peers are calling me saying, how do we help leaders, help folks lead through uncertainty? And how do we help them really lead strongly and thrive virtually?
But I'll keep going with that line of questioning. I mean, are people, people are feeling super uncertain. Dr. Steele, are you seeing the same thing? What are you guys saying as well?
Well, I think the concern is just across the board. So one of the things that I've been trying to do here within the department is share information about how to stay in contact with their teams. So we have Microsoft Teams. That's something that we've been using within the organization. So really pushing the leadership group to continue their scheduled meetings with their management team and getting their supervisors and managers to continue doing that as well. Being okay with being vulnerable during this period. Nothing is saying that you need to be, so hard and so structured to a point that you feel like you need to have all the answers. Being okay with saying, you know what, I don't know the specific answer to that question. Let's talk about it and try to figure it out together, or getting the guidance from our HR team to make sure that we're sticking to the facts. Because a lot of, what's going around in social media, if you follow that or some of the things that you're seeing just in the news, it makes you feel like COVID-19 is this, white witch walking around tapping people on their shoulders. And it's important to stick to the facts. So I love the fact that we open up with that in our conversation today, and continuing to stay focused on what it is that people can do to address all of this.
Okay, absolutely. George, what are you hearing?
Eric, number one, thank you for having me on the call today. One of the critical things I've been hearing among our supplier diversity and inclusion peers, both in the healthcare space as well as general across industry, is the fact that minority and diverse businesses are not prepared to react to the emergency that's up front. The major issue is diverse businesses being able to react to interruptions in supply chain. Number one, diverse businesses already being stressed just in the normal course of business and being able to supply goods, products, and services within our current time frame, within our current national and statewide leadership, and those policies that surround protecting diverse business and small business. Ahead of this call, I was on a national conference call with the National Minority Supplier Development Council Healthcare Industry Group. These are all supplier diversity professionals across the United States, as well as individuals that are representing large, diverse businesses that supply the healthcare industry. Key to our conversation was, how do we begin sharing information across owners such as UPMC, University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, and other agents such as Kaiser Permanente, Cleveland Clinic, Grady Health, all of these healthcare organizations who have supplier diversity professionals that want to represent those diverse business owners, but because of just the simple scale of the number of diverse businesses there are in our country, they are significantly challenged and will continue to be challenged based upon these larger manufacturers spinning up and being able to provide additional cost savings, volumetric pricing, and things of that nature. And so we're trying to remain diligent in terms of infusing diverse businesses to our supply chains. And when we talk about team adjustment, we are pushing more and more information and access to our sourcing group and to other sourcing professionals to make certain that diverse businesses are not forgotten during the COVID-19 period.
Okay. I know there's a lot of, in terms of, we're looking at the new bill that's coming through Congress. We're wondering how does that impact minority? Is there any minority consideration with that? That's another conversation. But like you said, it's going to have a significant effect on minority businesses and those especially connected to healthcare.
Eric, if I could jump in, one of the key things we have to be certainly aware of is just our national statistics on minority-owned businesses and diverse businesses. The vast majority of them are led by a staff of one. Roughly 5% of diverse businesses in the United States, and I'll speak specifically for African-American owned, have more employees, 5 or more employees. And so it's not only just the health disparity that is at risk, but for that entrepreneur who say may have healthcare insurance, but because of their incapacity to scale up and take advantage of these opportunities, many of those business owners are at risk. And I'm glad to see the panel across various aspects of medical practice be able to speak to the psychology, the health, as well as the economics of what we're dealing with, because our community really is not prepared, even though we've gone through multiple viruses. You see on Facebook, I didn't die from the virus in 99, 2000, 2001, but I just am curious to know how many businesses died as a result of those sorts of pandemics, and the fact that our diverse business population is not preparing itself for these types of incidences.
Well said, well stated, well stated. Same team, what are some of the key strategies that you guys have put in place to deal with this pandemic? What's that on paper? Are there some strategies you guys are using with your departments? Are there specific strategies? I know that one organization has this backup strategy. There is from top to bottom, what are your roles? Who's backing up? Who's backing you up in case you come down with the virus? And there's some very significant and structured processes that they're working with themselves through. What are you guys hearing? What are you guys doing?
So I would say we are first trying to get into the mindset of our leaders. We believe at Liberty Mutual that progress can be made when people feel safe and secure. And so our first strategy is to really adjust the mindset of our leaders around who they are, how they're dealing with the situation, and how they're going to prep their teams for optimal success. So that's really the first strategy. We're also helping people understand that the way we lead is different now. Historically, we may have been focused on results. Now we're shifting. We're shifting to an energy around having way more one-on-one connections versus a bunch of team connections. We're all mandated to work virtually across the entire organization, across the globe. So there's no more face-to-face. In fact, it's been suspended until May 1st. So I will not physically see my staff again until May 1st if things go well. So we are having people understand that the energy now is about, I am actually with you. We're in this together. I care about you, and let's figure out how we can focus on the work. So we're shifting. It's an insurance company and very actuarial, very metrics focused. That is no longer the focus anymore. So I think we've shifted the way we lead. I would say that as a strategy from Liberty Mutual.
So George, is it going to return back, Dr. Steele, is it going to return back to business as normal? Are we going to be, is it going to snap back? And Dr. Dotson, please chime in, anyone chime in. Things have changed. I mean, people are working from home. Once again, I mentioned that I've had two inhabitants of my house, a 15-year-old and a 10-year-old. I didn't plan on being a fourth grade teacher, but I've had to shift my mornings around to make sure this little guy gets up. My daughter, pretty self-sufficient, straight A student, bragging on it. Yes, I am.
The question is, do you understand the math? That's the question.
The fourth grade math I'm having no problem with. When I'm working with my daughter, she's actually helping me help her. But what's next? Is it going to change? I mean, in terms,
the normal we had before all of this, I think, is gone. So our new normal is going to be defined based on how organizations react in this moment. And I think this is a great opportunity and I look at situations and say what is happening and what good can come out of it. So innovation is going to come out of this. Department of Revenue has a lot of services that are available online for customers to take advantage of. We are one of the few states within the Southeast that has a kiosk that allows for customers to go to and renew their tags. I think more states are going to be looking at things like that, and they're available in our supermarkets, especially in the Metro Atlanta area. And so people are going to start looking to utilize those resources versus trying to go to a tag office to renew their license plate. Of course, the governor is putting something out to extend to 60 days for people who are expiring. But just looking at things like that, and more states starting to think about how do we create services or facilitate opportunities for customers to still get what they need without having to see us face to face. So I think a lot of innovation is going to end up coming out of all of this. I know the way that people are doing meetings now, it's very different. But I've had more productive meetings doing them on my phone using, Microsoft Teams than sometimes when you have to actually schedule a meeting, because then you have to think about the location that person is in and the timing of that meeting versus another meeting when you can, jump on really quickly, ask a question, show the document and say, here's what I'm thinking about. Does that work? And then moving forward with what needs to happen. So although this is, I mean, this is a terrible situation for us to be in. But I always try to look at what positive things can come out of it. And I think it is going to put us in a place where small, large entities are going to start looking and saying, how can we be better? How can we ensure that we're never put in a situation like this where we're just now trying to figure out how to cope in a situation where we can't handle certain things face to face?
Eric, can I ask a question to the business team? Because one of the things we find that unfortunately not all places have access to an internet. And so in some communities where they don't have internet access, I mean, being able to vote online and doing all those different things. So I think we need the help from the business side to say, hey, how do we make sure that this is in every home? So you got your kids, Eric, you're at home doing your homework,
Yeah.
but in Wisconsin and in Chicago, there's some kids who don't have internet access. So they've been shortchanging this whole deal.
I think you're right. My organization, all of our employees didn't have laptops, especially out of the United States. There was no work from home. So we've had to give almost every employee laptops.
Wow.
Yeah, and speaking to that, you know, when you talk about the advent of internet, you know, let's look even deeper. That home may not even have a computer to even connect to the internet.
Right.
And so what we've seen nationally in specific geographic locations, this is not across the country, but certain regions have received donations from Google, from Apple, from PC manufacturers to help assist the school districts at least getting a PC in the child's hand. I know here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, we have a unique relationship with Xfinity and with Comcast, where they provide Essentials, which is their low bandwidth internet for $9 a month for students. You have the option of purchasing a computer through them for roughly $100. But yet again, here we are in an economic situation where, you know, most people are glued to their TV screen waiting for a national update from our national leaders. And unfortunately, it seems like the numbers that they're talking about issuing to US citizens, whether adult or child, continue to decrease, not increase. And so, you know, even being able to move that economic number to impact our people is still up in the air. So no, those are definite issues and concerns. We've seen some local organization across African-American programming that are trying to get resources to students because they know waiting on certain systems, they won't have them.
Yeah.
Eric, I just want to add to that by saying that I think this has also increased the panic in healthcare. I have patients who almost feel as though they've been abandoned because we've switched to this telemedicine so quickly, and they don't have access to computers or what they would need to be able to communicate with me via telemedicine. So it's a scary time for them and for us, because we don't want any of our patients to feel abandoned, especially pandemic.
Yeah. I know, 'cause first when I think about telemedicine, I think about the privilege to have that opportunity to tell, you know, have telemedicine or tele anything else. One of the things we notice even from LEAD360's standpoint is how we do our business is changing. The reality is, are we relying every time? We're always gonna have to get together just because of the culture. There's a need to get together to hang out with people who look like you and have a conversation in a safe place. But the interactions throughout the year become much more online. The curriculum that we're in terms of taking leaders from one step to the next level. We have to start building communities on some of the technologies that we have. We doubt that 2021 will look like 2020 in terms of our planning and things of that nature. So how do we maintain connectivity, growth, career development in 2021 in the post-COVID era? But I think that there's a lot of opportunity. I've been surprised at the energy around people, organizations, and partners to say, wow, these are some ideas we can do. We can have. But I was having a conversation about technology earlier today about understanding the difference between the next generation and the way they view technology, where they see that there's a significant amount of innovation. Some people are actually happy that this is going on because it provides them an opportunity, an outlet, and a way to connect with their organizations. Some people don't want to go to work anyway, because some people are saying, well, I go to work, I have to deal with the politics, I'd rather deal with the performance and then the occasional connection. The good thing is you might get some things done. You will increase the breadth of the people you can engage in terms of, from a vertical standpoint, age-wise. The bad thing is connectivity may be lost, as much as we know it now. But the reality is the personalities of the next generation are not the same as the boomers, if you will. So therefore, there's a change, there's a shift. The question is, who will be able to shift going forward? So, with a lot of panic around, and I'm going to ask David to advance the slide, there's a lot of, we'll make sure we've exhausted all of our business questions. So literally, I got to tell you, for me, I got on I love when I pick up I get to surf through the television. I get to see Dr. Janet Taylor on Good Morning America or on some television program, and it representing a very high level of intellect and representing who we are in that space. So I asked her, how should we think? This is a big change. This is a shift. Back in the day in the 80s, remember the big word paradigm shift? We thought that was really cool. Maybe the 90s. The reality was this is a change. People are panicked. People are feeling insecure. How should we think about this disease, this situation today? And what are some of the personal, me personally, like I said, I'll probably be texting you like, I'm freaking out for a minute. But the reality is what should we do? What's going on?
So thank you, Eric, and happy birthday to you, Dr. Wells.
Thank you.
And thanks for including me on this panel. So I think the way we have to think about the disease is what it is, and that is a threat, not only to our livelihood, it's a threat to us physically, it's a threat to us psychologically, and a threat to our families, especially when you think about the risk to our elder parents or elder families. And there's so much guilt about especially with the lack of testing, whether someone may have been exposed, and do I bring that home, to my grandmother? I know my daughter is a guidance counselor in Miami, and a lot of her students live with their grandmothers and were in tears about just not knowing if they were going to make the people who are taking care of them sick. So this is not just a disease that incorporates, the typical medical model. It really potentially can impact us throughout our whole not just lifespan, but the different aspects of our life that we touch. And so to that degree, if you think about, especially Black people, a number of us have come into this moment already stressed, and the uncertainty of the disease, the uncertainty about whether we will have our jobs, the uncertainty about whether we'll have access to medicine. I mean, I haven't seen a bottle of at work I have a bottle of hand sanitizer, but I've not been able to get one for my home. And so those things that we are missing certainly play a part. And so it's important to understand how our brain works. And in times, our brains like things that are certain. And as much as we give this whole aspect that we can multitask, our brains function better when they function on one thing. And so when our brains are uncertain, they look for information. It looks for information, but if it can't find relevant information to what the threat is, then it basically makes up the worst case scenario. And that's where too many of us are living right now, just wondering if this COVID-19 virus is going to attack us when we go outside, or certainly cause disease and mayhem inside our homes. So the first thing that we have to do is stay tuned on not what the person who's supposed to be leading this country is telling us, but going to relevant sites like the CDC or talking to your doctor. If you have symptoms, knowing that the symptoms are what you heard, and getting tested, washing your hands frequently with soap and water. I mean, we were talking about access to telemedicine. A number of my patients, some of them don't even have hot water. And so they certainly, they might have like the Obama phones, as you call them, as they call them, but they don't have smartphones. So what we have done is an approach where we're switching to telemedicine now, but we also have people stationary in our clinic. So if somebody walks in, we can still see them. And yes, we can space them out, but I think there has to be that you really plan for the fact that everybody's not going to get the memo. And I work with individuals who have chronic mental illness, people who have been incarcerated, low socioeconomic status. So we really have to meet people where they are. The other challenge, I think, for the disease is the fact that if you are a parent and you have your children at home, educationally, our children, especially Black and brown children, need to be in school. A number of school systems closed without adequate preparation. They were not all equipped for distance or remote learning. And so you are trying to manage being on a conference call, you're trying to manage your children, and it's really stressful for a number of people. And so to that end, I mean, certainly healthcare is a business. I don't work in a business corporation every day, but I would imagine if you were a person of color, it's great that you can be on your conference calls, but knowing how difficult it is for us to make it to the C-suite, like how do we make sure that we measure what we are doing and who sees that and who do we still need to be in contact with so that we can get our due? And so I think that's an element as well that people are going through. So it's vulnerability, it's stress, it's uncertainty, and
Yeah.
also the question about whether we're going to have our jobs or not, which is a real threat. So this is not just about being tested and certainly, the hope that, is probably maybe a little bit away about a treatment and certainly a vaccine's down more, but like how, this battle that we find ourselves in all the time, like how do we manage that? And a big part of that has to do with our psychological health, our spiritual health, and really being able to rein in when we find ourselves drifting too far and coming back to information, coming back to what settles us, and basically every day having a strategy to get yourself back in balance.
Yeah, I mean, thank you very much. I think that one of the major significant weird things about this is you don't know where it's coming from. You have a situation where it's almost an ominous situation. When you go outside, you see a neighbor across the street, is 6 feet enough? Like, no, how about 12? You see somebody in the aisleway and they walk right up to you, I'm really about to punch you right now because I'm not trying to take this home to my kids. The reality is, fortunately, you have situations where you have grandparents at home. My mom has since gone on to glory last year. That would have been crazy. Like, wow, what do we do with a 91-year-old woman sit here, or 92 in this case, probably? The reality is, what do you do? And I look at these people on television. I will take a minute here. I saw the man who's singing to his wife through the window. And that's so incredibly real. It's a situation where, we have a leader cast talking about leaders in corporate America, but the reality is, as you all know, coming here is about what is the emotional compound that's happening right now. How do we cope? How do you cope with that? And how do you help people cope around you?
Right.
How do you take on the responsibility of reaching out to someone? I was telling Dr. Taylor, for me, I'm an introvert. So the fact that we're all home by ourselves is really cool. Okay, I'm a fake extrovert, right? So the reality is, I address, and I found out, I think my entire family were introverts because no one says, let's go outside except for my little guy, and he only wants to go out for a minute to play basketball.
Yeah.
How do you help other people cope? What are some coping strategies, breathing strategies? What do you help? When you talk to your clients, what are you telling them to do? Not to just jump, just to say, scream with the top of their lungs.
Yeah. Well, the loneliness is real, and certainly working from home may give some people comfort, but a lot of people who find their social interactions mostly at work are reporting that they're feeling lonely. But the way to really cope in a positive way is to think about this. I mean, this is an opportunity for us to reset. Whether it's how we look at how we're working, how we look at how we structure our time, who's important to us, how we reach out to people. So when our brains are stressed, our bodies are stressed, it's really important that we give time to get back in balance or recover. So at times of stress, it's important to get enough sleep, to watch your diet, to exercise. I mean, there's no reason why you can't go outside and exercise as long as, you're feeling well, so you're not sick, as long as you're not in large groups. But it's important to exercise and do that. It's also a time to reflect reflect on when we were stressed in the past, mountains that we have overcome, so we can get back to those positive coping mechanisms. I know a lot of people are reporting, and I know in New York, all the liquor stores are still open, and even in Florida, liquor stores are open even though health clubs are closed. But but you have to look at positive coping mechanisms, not a negative coping mechanism, to get evidence-based information, not to go off everything you read on Twitter or what people say, but to really look at the source and get real information for yourself. It's also an opportunity to practice self-care. And self-care is when you practice mindfulness. And mindfulness is not just letting things go, but it's when you recognize that you're suffering and you do something to make yourself feel better. You treat yourself as you would an old friend with loving kindness. And this whole notion of connectedness comes up again. Like the whole world is suffering right now. People are all sacrificing, so it's not just you. So to keep that in mind. And also, I think lastly is using technology, using a phone, even looking through a window and not checking on your neighbors and people, understanding that through social distancing, we can still be connected. And what does that look like? I know a lot of people and their families who are having Zoom meetings even for their families. So the togetherness is making us pay attention to relationships within our family. Some of them are functional, some of them are dysfunctional, but it's an opportunity to work on that, but really recognize the importance of how we connect. And I think as leaders, that means that we check on our people and make sure that things are going okay at home, or they have access to healthcare, they have water, they have everything they need, and don't assume that, because it's really a critical time for folks, and they're really stressed and anxious and afraid. And so time will tell, how long this lasts, but we really need to, measure ourselves, because I think it's going to go the distance, and so we have to prepare for it.
Well,
so Dr. Taylor mentioned, about not seeing the Purell. This is the bottle that sits on my desk at work. I'm actually still in the office. Parts of our organization are considered critical to the state, so this stays on my desk. If you come in here and you leave, I spray, even if you did not stay for an extended period of time. I am just being, extremely careful, especially because I have my son who's at home. And so going home means whatever I may happen to pick up here, I'd be bringing that home with me. But Dr. Taylor made a good point about connection. I didn't even realize that Instagram had something that you could do a group video chat on there until my phone was going crazy with like this scrolling list of names, because all of my cousins got together and created a video chat because they just wanted to check in, just to make sure that, I was okay, because I have, family, they're nurses. My brother's a doctor in Jamaica. And so you have these people who are out there on the front lines. I have a friend who owns a trucking company, and now he's on the road as well. And so they're out there dealing with this stuff every day. I'm in the office, in my office working, but there are people who are interacting with individuals who are, struggling or battling this disease. And so we have to keep connected with them, because we assume that, people are busy and they're working, or we have staff members that may be working remotely. They're home, they should be fine. One of the things I've been intentional with the individuals that report to me who are part of my team is, how can I help you today? Or is there something that you need in order to make working at home more productive for you? You have to, there's that accountability piece, but there's also the human factor of it, and just making sure that you're checking up on individuals. And like Dr. Taylor said, not assuming that they're okay because they're working at home. You don't know if there's something that is a fundamental need. I have my neighbors who picked up some Cinnamon Toast Crunch for my son yesterday, just because they know that's his favorite cereal. So just thinking about all those little things and making sure that we're thinking beyond ourselves. But I think before we even start thinking about anyone else and what they need, is making sure that we are okay. One of the things that, I always try to practice is making sure that I have enough in my cup before I can pour for someone else. So taking time to be mindful of where you are and how you're feeling, and processing your feelings. As a leader, our responsibility, whether with our family, with our work, etc., is to influence change. And it's going to be hard to pour if you're pouring from an empty cup. So making sure that we're taking in, like Dr. Taylor said, taking in information that is factual, getting the information from, your state public health or from the CDC, There's so many things that are going on Instagram and Facebook and all these other places that's not factual, but making sure that you have factual information to be dependent on, and then being able to share that information. A young man came into my office earlier to fix something on my computer. And as soon as he got up, I started spraying again. And he's like, really? You're doing me like that? And I said, I am not playing around. I said, this is how this passes. And I explained that to him because I wanted him to understand. And then I gave him a small bottle of Purell for him to carry with him because he has other, things that he's working on. And so he might be touching, surfaces that this may be sitting on. So just making sure that we know the information and know the facts. So if we do need to share that, we can.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know that one thing I want to mention before we get to the questions that they have come through the chat is I called my home minister up, or my dad's home minister up, and where I first went to church, the Union Grove Baptist Church in Toledo, Ohio, and it's a small church. Maybe you go there, you may see, maybe 100 some odd people in the pews. And during this time, this is the old Baptist church. I think the Reverend Spears is maybe from Arkansas, and everybody else that is at this church probably from Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama. And they are not going to do well this week in terms, and they live on those offerings and tithes. And I called him up and said, well, how much do you normally do a week? I said, well, I'll take care of this month. And I'm blessed to be able to do that. But the bottom line is, you guys, I know I'm a member of this mega church here, First Baptist of Glen Arden here, with Pastor John K. Jenkins here. You can see him online. This is a mega, super church. And of course, we contribute there as well. But always remember those smaller organizations, those smaller churches that are becoming those beacons and those communities for everyone. Pull on a check, write something. We are learning to be a more giving people. Make sure you're taking the time to contribute to those organizations, churches, and communities. So I want to put a kind of a plug out for that. Lydia, I know we have some questions that we've come through, and we'll now transfer to our Q&A session, and then we'll have one statement from each person on the panel. Lydia?
Okay, I'm gonna check questions here.
We had a couple of chats.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. Okay, so Eric, what I'm gonna have to do is stop share to check the questions.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Well, you guys look great. Look at this. I had to put my own Grecian formula in today, so I had to get rid of the Santa Claus effect.
Everyone looks fantastic, like I said.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is very good. I mean, literally, what the statement I have for the day is, as leaders, we have to check on our people, and that's exactly what we're doing now with LEAD360. We had the conversation, Lydia. It's like, what are we doing for our cohorts? What are we putting together? And the idea was to put together information that's credible with people who are actually on the front lines, whether it's at work, whether it's in your emergency rooms, like Dr. Bernard Anderson had to go to the other day and actually deal with patients dealing with this disease. So I'm really thankful to have good friends like you guys, I like to call, because I will be calling you guys, as much as I'm an introvert, I'm also verbose. So I do call you guys up, quite frankly, as well. So I know one thing, we talked about building communities, and I know Annie Holmes has joined us. She's she's running a big part of the education system and in charge of organizations throughout the nation. She sent me an IM on LinkedIn saying, I can't wait to get on this thing because I personally want to know what should I do right now. So there's an urgency, there's a concern. We are also broadcasting on Facebook Live, and we're also broadcasting Somewhere else, David, I'm just forgetting here. So the bottom line is our Facebook Live works really well. Our Facebook page.
We're going to give our attendees a moment to type in their questions.
Okay. I know we got a couple of chats there, but I'm not sure what those are.
Those are folks letting us know that they were here.
Okay.
So we're going to give everyone a chance to submit their questions. Questions are welcome.
Okay. In the meantime, do any of you have any other questions for example, we've got these awesome physicians here and awesome leaders here, colleagues as well. Any questions you guys may have want to jive to each other.
So can I ask Dr. Taylor a question? Dr. Taylor, so if we look at other crises that we've gone through in the country, I mean, the most recent one comes to mind is Katrina. After certain crises like that happens, do we see an uptick in things like anxiety and controls already? But what things can we make sure that people don't feel hopeless and alone, that, hey, they don't have a job, no check for 2 weeks, what's going on? So historically, what has occurred and how can we preempt that?
So I think the thing to do, and that's a great question, is usually if you think about post-traumatic stress syndrome, which is, when a stress happens and it persists and people have anxiety, depression, about 10% of individuals who experience a stressor will have it. So most of us are resilient. However, going into it, knowing that many of us have had other stresses in our life, even the microaggressions from being Black, or brown or even Asian, with coronavirus in this society, is to pay attention and to ask the question. Because what we know is, for Black women, they will go into a doctor's office 10 times before the doctor will say, how are you doing? Like, how are you really doing? So I think it's really that matter of checking in with our patients, with our family members, with, our employees, like how are you doing and what can I do to help you? As was said earlier, that's so important. And also to make people understand that vulnerability, anxiety at this time is normal. If it lasts longer than 2 weeks, whether it's anxiety, depression, not sleeping, then to talk to your healthcare provider. But there's so much uncertainty. The stress and angst that we're feeling is normal.
Great, thank you.
I have a question. So why toilet paper? Why was there a big rush on toilet paper? I mean, what is that? What was the, I was like, does Corona have some correlation with diarrhea? What is the heck up with the toilet paper? Dr. Taylor?
I don't know what the real answer is. I think that we are historically a copycat society. We like to follow movements, if you will, and also the scarcity mindset. Once you see that, you start to think, oh, is tissue going to be scarce? So I better get it. There's a lot of propaganda that you see. I think it goes back to what Dr. Taylor said around evidence-based sources. We kind of just jump on bandwagons that we see on social media and we like to copy. So I that's not verified information. That's just my hunch.
Yeah, I think the other.
I think she's right.
Yeah, I think the other fact is, when things are uncertain, we want something that we can control. And there was a scarcity model that was like, you need water, you need toilet paper, you need Purell. When the water was out, the sanitizer was out, people grabbed toilet paper. So it made them feel like they were in control.
Okay.
But Dr. Taylor, I think what I'm trying to understand is, did people not have toilet paper at home? Because when, like there's staples that I have standard: paper towel, rubbing alcohol, toilet paper, and I have enough to last for a month. I do one big purchase, I put it up in the attic and it's there. So I was just really confused. All the greens and the stuff they're supposed to build your immunity are still in the supermarket, but then toilet paper, there is none in the store.
Well, I think there are also conflicting messages about shelter in place, what that meant. Everything was going to shut down. And as we know, like CVS is hiring 50,000 people, Walmart, Target, all the big box stores are hiring more people. So those stores are staying open, but then the supplies are low.
Well, the bigger thing becomes people's discernment capability. How are you being equipped to make decisions based upon your environment, based upon your economics, based upon your ability to forecast? And so, I know in certain geographic regions, and Eric, you need to contribute to Braden United Methodist Church, another one of your home churches. But You know, when you have areas that have scarcity of water. So for example, City of Toledo, roughly 5 years ago, had a natural disaster that occurred where there was bacterial growth on their water source. So that specific region has this aversion. Anytime there is an emergency, they sell out on water. Let's look at Flint, Michigan, for example. Let's look at certain portions of Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, where the economics of even having staple facilities to treat water, drinking water, things of that nature, they're not there. Let's even look at Atlanta, for example, where your water source is primarily all well water. So you're not even at a major source of a body of water where you have continuous flow of drinking water. So, you know, we have these areas of psyche based upon geography that, you know, as one of the panelists mentioned, that, you know, we sort of tend to follow people. I find it very odd that here in Pittsburgh, you can find paper towels, but you cannot find toilet paper. I was just in Toledo last week. You can't find nothing.
Wow.
You know, it just depends.
That was before COVID-19, though. I'm from Toledo, by the way, so believe me, I know. So, we're from the same hometown and the same church.
Right.
One of the other panelists said, though, I think the biggest thing that we're looking at is that we are facing a disease where everybody feels like they have no control. They can't control anything that's going on. I actually had a patient call me today, one of my elderly patients, and she simply said, I just needed to hear your voice. So important to her because she didn't want to feel like she was abandoned. She said, are you still my doctor? And so, like, she doesn't know what's happening. She can't control anything. So it's just the basic things. We don't even have to make big gestures. I think in this position right now, my patients need my compassion more than they even need the medical knowledge I'm able to give them. You know?
Absolutely.
I will say that is very true. So I had a refill request that I put in through CVS. I rarely talk to my doctor. I talk to him when I go in for my visits, and I submitted the request yesterday. So it hit his inbox, I guess, late last night or this morning. And he called just to say, just wanted to check in on you to make sure you're good. And I approved the refill on your prescriptions. And it meant the world to me, because I know I'm not more than likely I won't see him for another 60 days or so just because of everything that's going on, and I'm not a priority. But it was a 60-second phone call, and it meant so much, because it means that at the end of the day, he wanted to make sure that George's seal was good. And I didn't need it, but in the time when it was happening, I felt needed and appreciated as his patient. So I certainly appreciated that.
That's great.
Awesome.
Eric, can I just ask one question to the physicians around the COVID virus? I guess that's yes. My question is, you all talked about how the virus actually goes in, you inhale it of sort, it goes in through your lungs. And I'm wondering, can this virus live in your stomach? Like, can you swallow it? Can the virus get in my food, and can I swallow it? Because I don't know the difference between how it gets from my mouth, throat, through my esophagus to my lung versus my stomach. Is that a weird question?
That's a great question.
That's a great question to me.
I'll take it. So the virus can live on skin, and that's why we need to wash our hands and the face and the eyes like we talked about. You can transmit it that way. But remember that the environment in the stomach is an acid. And when you ingest that, if you swallow it, it goes into the stomach, and the acid in the stomach is going to break it down. But going back to those spikes specific to, there is a molecule, a protein on the surface of the cells that line the nose, the pharynx, and in the back of the lungs, that this thing loves to attack. And this is why some of the drugs they've identified, it actually blocks that receptor on the surface of those cells. Wow. So there's trials that are going on now with some drugs that we know that can prevent things from getting to the lungs by that way. So yes, you get it into your mouth, you'll swallow it, but if you inhale it, your mouth and your throat are connected to the back. But if it gets into the stomach, you can't get it. Another question I saw online, somebody came up with, can you get it through the blood? The answer is no, it's not transmitted that way. On the other thing, we want to talk on some of the myths, and Dr. Anderson can touch on some of these as well, but I saw this crazy thing online. So the virus doesn't survive at high temperatures. So this whole theory about using a blow dryer to put into your sinuses to kill the virus, that's just ludicrous. And you can
That's
do
a
more
new
damage.
one.
So, but that's the stuff that's out there online. So we need to inform our patients, people, hey, look at reliable sources, call people and things like that. But there are so many different myths and everything that are out there. It can do more harm than good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and actually, I have been, for my family members, I've asked them to send me the information before they start sharing it with anybody. I really want to control what goes out because I'm increasing the panic, so I asked them to send it to me. As far as my patients, I asked them to please consider the city. But the other thing is not to be glued to this. People are actually just staring at the television all day long. That would increase anxiety. That would increase anxiety in me, and I have the knowledge to kind of sort through some of this stuff. So I've told people to kind of check in once a day, if you feel really anxious, or you just got to know, maybe again in the evening, but to really limit how much you are on social media and how much you are even looking at the news. Get a credible source, and I highly recommend that it be the CDC. That's who I am getting all my information from all day long.
It's very, my wife made a good story. It's very telling that now on the podium anymore, you don't see Tony Fauci with the because Tony Fauci has come out and said that some of the things that's being talked about at the podium is just not really based on science. So having people going out and buying this drug because they think it might work, this virus is going to be gone by April, saying that a vaccine is going to be available by the end of the year, those are just not true. And so, but you see, they've kind of muffled him from getting the scientific message out, I think, which is doing this in the country.
We knew that was going to happen. We knew, I have this thing I just tweeted out, not that I have a lot of followers, but no Fauci, no looky. Okay. I mean, if he's not there, I turn it right off because I know it's a show at that particular point in time. It's my personal perspective, but it's going to be a clown show at that particular point in time because I am I'm as a researcher, I'm always seeking, I'm a truth seeker. It's all about truth. And I got to tell you, the whole idea of calm came from a leader. And I don't know who Anthony Fauci is. I know he's probably around a quarter from me, but the bottom in Bethesda somewhere. But the reality is he instilled the leadership and calm at the particular point in time. And quite frankly, I was looking around for him and someone said, hey, where is he? And he's like, we don't know. Like, well, we need to know because there is no communication about this disease without the scientific expertise. And that's one of the reasons you guys are serving here as well. Okay, so we're getting we're at the top of the hour. This is always in a great conversation. I think I'm getting some type of social interaction here, like just hanging out with my friend. I forgot we're getting taped as well. But the reality is, if we can just maybe start with Dr. Dotson. I'm not sure how you guys are. We'll do what's called a Baptist. You guys may not be Baptist. Kind of a Baptist a prayer meeting here. You guys just jump in whenever you feel to say your final statements, and I'll end with mine.
Great. Well, I'll just say, in the midst of this horrible crisis, take a minute to notice what's good in the midst of the storm. There's actually a lot of good that's happening. Although it's not feeling that way. So those are my closing remarks. Okay.
Georgia?
Oh, you said Baptist church, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I always sat in the back when I went to church the Baptist church I went to in Jamaica. So, well, in all seriousness, leadership is something that is very important to me, but I think sometimes people tie leadership to a position. So for anyone who has the opportunity to watch this, leadership is not about title. Leadership is not about your role in the organization. Leadership is about influence. So whether it is leading your family, leading your community, or leading within your organization by influencing positive change, please do that. Take the opportunity to actually gain the right information from the World Health Organization, from CDC, from the great information that we've been able to obtain through this session. and share that so people are not tweeting or reposting things that are not correct. People talking about drinking bleach in order to make sure that they don't get the virus. Lead and influence by sharing the correct information. Check up on those around you that sometimes you may not even think about, or you think that they're okay. The introverts, we're pretty fine, but for your extroverted friends, they're going to need some help. So make sure that you're there to support them.
Thank you. Dr. Addison?
I'd like people to maintain hope, be hopeful. I am confident that this too shall pass. And I would like to see us come out of this better than we went into it. Stay encouraged and support one another and be kind. This is the time to really be kind. I don't know, we mentioned this earlier about going back to business as usual. I'm actually hoping that after this experience, we change what business looks like and that there's a new normal. Because I think COVID-19 has made us aware that we do need a new normal. And I just want to end by saying, stay hopeful.
Thank you. George.
So my parting word is resiliency. And when we talk about the impacts of COVID-19 on our business community, we have to recognize some level of resiliency. So in my conversations with diverse businesses, they're constantly angling to secure work. And one of the things that I've been working with my vendor pool is, are you working on your business or are you working in your business? We need to start taking this time to prepare our resiliency to bounce back from these circumstances, as well as to start planting seeds of new opportunity across this great landscape that we call our country. This is not a time to cower. This is a time to be smart. All of our healthcare professionals on this call have shared, getting the right information. That from a healthcare perspective, I encourage you to get the right information from a business perspective. Check out your SBDC, Small Business Development Center. Look for those resources with the Federal Minority Business Development Agency. Pay attention to your representatives at the state and federal level, because they are going to begin guiding policy, and we're already seeing it already with respect to financial guidance. So all of those tips are to prepare your business resiliency once we get through this time.
Thank you very much, George. Dr. Wells.
Yeah, my comments are, I think, when the clocks went off January 1st, 2020, we were practicing medicine one way. But as March of this year, medicine's completely been changed. And I think we will see it changing moving forward. I think this will allow us to say that we do indeed need a national insurance plan that will cover all of our citizens. So you won't worry about who's going to be able to get testing or not. The parting words I want to give out to all of our people listening, we should send out to our family and friends that CMS, which runs Medicare and Medicaid, last year changed the rules. Last week, rather, they said that if you need to do a telephone visit or a virtual visit with your doctor, your co-pays, your deductibles have been waived. So if you need to pick up a phone and call your doctor 2 or 3 times a week, that is covered. You should not be get a bill for that. So we've all transitioned to that. Not everybody has a computer like we talked about, but they still should be able to call their doctor, get their refills, making sure they have their questions and everything answered, and they should not get a bill in the mail. So the rules have changed, and I'm hoping that's going to continue to evolve as we look at what's going on. And if we have any of the politicians listening, I'm glad we're not seeing political ads anymore. They need to put those dollars into the resources that we talked about, providing computers and internet for patients, people who don't have it, and then, of course, for medical care. But I think we need to come together as a country and put our resources for the people who do not have the resources that we all can afford.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Lydia, you can put up kind of our final slide here. So,
Dr. Taylor, Eric, Dr. Taylor's comments.
Oh
yeah, I'm sorry, Dr.
I know you guys, it was so thorough. Mine will be brief. I think, I'm just reminded that out of chaos, and disruption is an opportunity for healing. And when you look at, after a storm, the trees are still standing, it points to the roots. And I think all of us, our families, our history of really deep roots, and to think about that, think about other people that have weathered the storm, and also to constantly, even in the midst of learning and pain, to have an attitude of gratitude and find something that you're thankful about every single day.
Yeah, one of the things I'm thankful about is having a really awesome network like you guys. I think that we have a tremendous amount of highly talented African American leaders, professionals, healthcare providers, academicians that are just out here. We see some recognition, but we have no idea. There's a good friend of mine, Dr. Bill Picard. Dr. Bill Picard is a millionaire, and I actually taught with him at Alabama State University some years ago. He would come in and get his personal flight. His personal plane would take him to, I think, Atlanta, and then he'd get his limousine driver to drive him all the way down to teach business at the Alabama State University's College of Business for $1 a year. And he has this whole book coming out talking about how amazing we are. He said, we have no idea the power, the accomplishments, and the impact we have because we don't talk about it illustrated enough. Mm-hmm. If there's one thing about our Win Anyway concept with LEAD360 is because we understand that we've got a pretty cool team overall nationally to win at anything we put ourselves in position to do, including in 2008 being president of the United States. We're the most, if you take any population in the entire world, no one has come from slavery to president of the United States, of that particular group, or there's no one. Maybe Joseph or something like that. But the bottom line, coming from the entire nation, the diaspora. I don't care whether you come through Africa or whether you come through Hawaii. No one's ever done that. We have and every time we get together, you always see the best individuals and make sure you're pouring into each other the same way. You're connecting out because you guys are an amazing group of individuals. This too shall pass. This too will get through. This too we will win. Thank you guys for showing up. Thank you guys for those who are chimed in, and thank you, awesome individuals and leaders who will actually look at this broadcast later on. Have an awesome evening. Take care.